What if I told you that you can actually get the things that you truly want by letting go? What if I told you that you actually need to let go to really allow life to give you the things that you actually really want, the things that truly fit with you? And this is a pretty interesting, very counterintuitive principle, because we think that if we just kind of assert ourselves onto life and kind of like force our way to what we want, then we'll get what we want. This is kind of how the ego thinks. But that ends up being a road of a lot of suffering, struggle, exhausting, and it's just not very efficient. Not to mention that we kind of get stuck on this preconceived belief of what we really think we want, and then we kind of have our blinders on. We kind of like close in on it, and we actually start to ignore other possibilities. I think another good point is that we actually kind of lose that connection to ourselves when we're like really hyper fixed on some kind of goal, and we're not really listening to our actual needs, our actual wants, the messages of our body, the messages of our soul, the messages of our sensations, the messages that come clearly even in the form of thought or image to a lot of people. We kind of just get controlled by this sort of conditioning within us. And then this kind of disconnects us from experience, from being, from existing, from being conscious. So I got to talk about this paradox of control really quickly. I made a previous video on it. And this is about trying to force outcomes and how this actually creates resistance, while surrendering opens up possibilities. And learning to actually trust the process can lead to unexpected, more aligned results than we might imagine. But of course, it's hard to trust the process. Humans throughout history have been dominating each other, raping, pillaging, fighting, struggling, etc. And we have a lot of that in us nowadays. So it's like we kind of have to go through this deeper healing journey and this sort of deepening of our consciousness in order to move beyond our survival impulses and just fear and selfishness and the corruption, all the brutal aspects of human nature. It's like we got to kind of clean ourselves up over time to really begin to actually live life in a really, really meaningful way. And that will actually allow us to begin to trust the process genuinely, not as this sort of like, corny saying of like, yeah, trust the process, but really embodying this. This kind of work actually takes like 10, 20 years. I know a lot of you probably don't want to hear that though. Letting go of attachment is another core part. Attachment creates this sort of block when it comes to getting what you want. It actually creates a lot of unnecessary anxiety. And I think a good example of this is trying to be creative, and you have that attachment to wanting to be creative and create something great, and it's kind of forceful. Of course, any of you who have done creative work, you realize you can't just like force creativity. There's got to be a sort of set of conditions that are right so that it can spontaneously arise in the moment. Maybe that means you're just looking out your window and relaxing, or maybe that means you're just, sitting, or like something happens and it kind of like begins to trigger it. Essentially, there's just like a safe environment, and then within that safe environment, creativity can kind of naturally begin to arise, or even like some kind of pressure as well in some kind of moment can spark a sort of creative solution if it's like absolutely needed for survival. The human mind can kind of just like generate it if it's open enough in a moment like that. But essentially, creativity comes from openness to being, openness to existence, openness to the present. You can't really force it. So by always kind of being attached, you actually just push away the thing that you actually want. You push away the beauty of your own creativity and how amazing it actually feels to just be a human with creative potential. So by releasing attachment, we cultivate peace and allow solutions to arise naturally in a very organic way. In the same way how when you're doing creative work, it spontaneously arises, it's natural. There's a distinct feeling to how natural it actually is. Embracing the present is another core part of this. Letting go allows us to be fully present rather than consumed by thoughts about the future or the past. And when present, we respond intuitively to life's unfolding rather than reacting from a place of ego, control, fear, things like this. We actually get in tune with our right brain rather than just our logical, linear sort of left brain, and we actually start to integrate them both. So it's a deeper integration of both, but we really start to tap into this sort of intuitive aspect of our experience. And when we do that, things kind of start to just align in a very non-logical, non-linear, non-conceptual way. There's just like sense, feeling, and intuition that just like detects it. And it's just like self-evident in your own experience. It's not something you would have to question, because then it's just gaslighting yourself. Moving on is aligning with natural flows in life. So nature functions effortlessly, like a river flowing to the sea. We can actually learn from this kind of ease by letting go of resistance. Your body's like 80% water, and there's always sensations and energy trying to flow through it, but your own resistance and tensions block your own flow of energy. They block the subjective flow of sensation in your body, and it kind of like represses you. You can't really be fully open, authentic, transparent, creative. And you kind of start just like restricting yourself due to fear. This is the ego. So letting go can help us align with the larger currents of life, which often lead us to the right place at the right time. I want to talk about the role of faith and trust. A lot of people don't like this word faith because they associate it with strictly religious people, but everyone has faith. Even a scientist has faith. If you have some kind of hypothesis that you have to test, you have to have enough faith in the hypothesis to even test it. Because if you have no faith in the hypothesis, you're not going to test it. So letting go requires trust in ourselves, others, and life itself, rather than always fighting against it. There's a time to be assertive. There's a time to, of course, have boundaries, stand up. There's also a time to integrate some more what I'm going to call feminine-related stuff, like letting go, being indirect, surrendering, attuning emotionally, just giving something attention without judgment. Of course, there's a time to be direct, assertive, logical, label things, and it's an integration, a sort of dance between both of these things that really has to be mastered. So faith helps us surrender and embrace uncertainty without fear. And it's not this sort of blind faith, but it's more of an experiential faith. Of like, why would I not surrender? Like the pain of not surrendering becomes so not worth it. And the joy of surrendering and trusting becomes so much more very obviously wise. The more intuitive aspects of yourself, you can just pick this up. Moving on is the element of personal transformation through surrender. So letting go actually leads to deeper self-awareness, because when you're always in control, assertive, that kind of mode, essentially you're sacrificing awareness for that. You're sacrificing a lot of self-awareness and personal growth. And a lot of our sense of control is this kind of like illusion. It's not as real as we really like to think it is. And I don't want you to kind of take this and turn it into some sort of like victim complex of like, I'm helpless and I can't do anything ever. But a lot of our sort of sense of control is just reactivity. It comes from tension, things like this. A lot of our life is controlled by forces that we're not even aware of whatsoever, like 95% of it, to be honest. Of course, we can become aware of it. But again, learning to just kind of let go leads to that transformation, allows things to start happening naturally, allows things to start aligning naturally. So it's in the space of surrender that true change and clarity can actually emerge. True clarity doesn't come from force, always being stuck in this sort of like overly masculine, assertive, direct mode. Of course, there's a good time and place for that, and you really have to integrate that. But you're missing so many other aspects of human experience and your own awareness, your own mind. You're going to cap your development as a human being at a very conventional level of human consciousness. You're not going to be able to go past it. So it's in the space of surrender that true change and clarity can really emerge. And I really want you to kind of contemplate the kind of clarity that a Buddhist monk has. Right? Not a dogmatic Buddhist monk, because a lot of those places actually can be quite dogmatic. Just sort of believing in dogma, following tradition blindly, not questioning it. I've been to some of those places. But like a high quality Buddhist monk, right? If you go and you look at maybe like Spiral Dynamics, Stage Turquoise, right? You look at some of those kinds of Buddhist monks, just the clarity that comes with letting go, surrendering, being grounded, being present. There's just a deeper connection that spontaneously emerges and a shift in perception that starts to just emerge as you create the conditions for it to arise. That's it for this video. If you're interested in working one-to-one with me, you can apply to do so. Link is in the pinned comment. Take it easy.